Oh, you know what I love?
Sports.
I love sports.
Sports.
When it comes to Texas A&M.
Where are you getting this information?
Let me tell you.
Welcome to TexAgs.
TexAgs Live.
I feel like I should be listening to the theme song from the Jeffersons. You know, we're moving on up.
We will develop men, we will graduate players, and we will win championships on the field.
It's a blessing to be in this position, and we're just thankful to be here. We're thankful to have the opportunity to go out there and play in front of the 12 man.
He is a guy that has gotten better and better and better. He's just got that dog in him.
It's been special. The 12th man this past week was unbelievable.
And this is a real program. It's not fake. This is a real place. And if you want to be really good at football, this is a really good place to be.
You know, if I'm betting on anybody, it's the Aggies.
Hump day, hump day, hump day. What day is it, OB?
Hump day.
It's hump day on TexAgs Live, the B-Team version. Yet again, we thank you for joining us this morning inside the Rollo Insurance Studios. TexAgs Live presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. I'm Ryan Brauninger.
I'm Olin Buchanan.
He's Olin Buchanan. It's the Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse at CC Creations. Olin has this thing, and you know that Olin's starting to get into a zone whenever he breaks out the pen and paper, and he starts like kind of stammering and talking to himself while the intro's playing. I've got my headphones in. You do this thing, OB, and I love you to death. Okay, I do. I love you to death. But you get these great ideas, and it doesn't happen often.
My wife would love me to for my death.
You get these ideas, and that brain starts working. And once the train starts going down the track, it's hard to stop. I get it, especially as you get older, right? That thing starts chugging down the track, and Olin's got a good idea.
Speed.
Good idea. Good idea. Good idea. Good idea. And that's what it sounds like in his brain. And so, like, this good idea for radio subject matter started coming out at about 7:30, 7:40 this morning. And I said, Olin, just stop talking about it. We can go on air with it. But Richard was standing in here, and that train was going down the track. So I think I got it derailed, or at least the brakes put on it enough that we can talk about it here for.
If that train should jump the track, would you want your money back?
Yes.
You said YES and you are out. Did y'all do that when you were a kid? Like to decide teams or whatever? Do it.
We used to do catch a tiger by the tail.
Yeah, same thing. We caught the tiger by the toe. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. We caught the tiger by the toe. Okay, yeah. I'm sorry.
This train is derailed now. Completely derailed.
It's a matter of time.
We do have subject matter, and what you brought to the table, I thought was great and beats anything that I had planned, because trying to put a little bit of a, not historical to go back all the way through the last 40 years or 50 years of Aggie football, but just a recent historic context on what A&M's done in recruiting so far in this class under Mike Elko, and especially what they've done this summer. So this is going to be a little bit of recruiting-centric first hour, Go Hour with OB. We're also going to have Jason Howell in at 10 o'clock to talk more recruiting. There is a massive decision upcoming. I say massive decision. It's an important decision because of the optics of it, but it's a recruiting battle that is going to go all the way down to the wire, regardless of what Lamar Brown, the 5-star defensive lineman from Baton Rouge, decision, regardless of the decision he makes. Tomorrow, he's set to announce Thursday, July the 10th. So regardless of what the decision is tomorrow, that is going to be haymakers back and forth between the Aggies, LSU Tigers. It wouldn't surprise me if Texas tries to jump back in. Miami's been involved. He is going to make a verbal commitment tomorrow. And with that kind of on deck, it got those creative juices, all the creative juices flowing in Olin Buchanan's, in his innards. But before we get into that, let's go around the room, introduce everybody on the show. I did that again. Boy, I'm telling you what, I've had some real throwback brain farts this week hosting. In the Angry Elephant News and Social Center, Reese Nygren. Reese, good morning.
Good morning. How are y'all?
If I was to tell you, if we were going to talk historical recruiting data, how far back would that go in your lifetime? What do you think is historic?
I would say anything before I was born. So anything before 2005. I mean,
Wait,
So I graduated
you were
high
born in
school.
2005?
I was born in 2005.
Oh,
yes.
God, I'm so close to death.
Just don't die
man,
right here. I
I'm
won't be able to
running
get
out
through
of
the rest.
time.
I like that Richard to come in here for the rest of the hour.
I got to start enjoying my life more. What's left of it?
Yeah, I can tell you're really struggling to do that.
No,
You got a great tan.
well, you know,
Vacation did you well.
it did.
You got a better tan on South Padre than you did in Phoenix.
I was out in the sun more in
Yeah,
South
you-
Padre than I was Phoenix.
You said you've been having some trouble sleeping. What you want to tell everybody?
We discussed this yesterday.
Oh, did you?
I
Okay.
got burned so bad. You know, I said I got burned almost like Richard Pryor. And so at night when I turn, especially on my left side of my torso, if I turn in my sleep and I land on that spot, it hurts, and I wake up when it kind of do.
Well, it's one thing I didn't think that I was going to see this morning was Olin's obliques. But you do. You look like a lobster.
It's. I look like a burned lobster, or a steamed lobster.
Had a good time with the in-laws, though, huh?
Yeah, my in-laws are great. Oh, Dilbia and Beto, you know, their daughter, Addison. She just completed her freshman year here at Texas A&M,
Mhm.
so we're glad to have an actual Aggie in the family.
You have a great story about your niece. Is it your niece? About the Trevor Werner?
Oh yeah. My niece loved. She thought Trevor Werner was just dreamy, and her birthday coincided with the Aggies' run up in Omaha. So I got Trevor Werner aside, and I said, "Listen, we're in the team hotel, right?"
Yep.
And it was after some interviews, and I said, "Would you mind just doing a video?" It's my niece Addison. She thinks you're amazing, and would love for you to just, you know, say, "Hey, happy birthday." So he does like a 20-second video. Hey,
This is
Addison. This is Trevor Werner from third base, Texas A&M. I understand it's your birthday. Listen, I hope you have a happy birthday. Da 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 da. And I got finished with it, and somehow I cut it off after 1 second.
He took a picture.
I sent it to my sister-in-law to send it, and she said, "Okay."
It was the most Olin thing of a very Olin trip. I got to say that trip to Omaha in 22 was an extremely Olin Buchanan trip. But that was the peak, like the epitome of it.
Well, what else did I screw up?
Just having you with us the whole time.
Losing my phone, was that the
losing
trip where
your
I lost my phone?
The car ride there and back. We learned a lot about old OB that between here and Omaha,
We
Nebraska.
took the time away from Reese.
What did you like to chime in on that? I mean, that's a very. Y'all would call that very boomer behavior.
Yeah, taking a picture instead of a video. But I would say that my sister had a pretty fangirl moment last year in Omaha for Ted Burton.
Oh yeah,
she was a big Ted Burton fan. So we waited out after the game. I think it might have been the game that got delayed, the Florida game, the very first one. We waited outside by the bus for Ted Burton to come out. She's screaming, hollering, "Ted, Ted." And then finally he gets on the bus and she was like, "Oh, I missed my chance." But she's still screaming for Ted. And then I forgot who it was. Someone pulled Ted off the bus to come back down and take a picture with her. And she was just
melted,
over the moon.
Chris Martins is pulling the strings on the show today. Chris, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Good. Has Nick got you kind of on the straight and narrow this morning?
He does. He has me in line today.
How much of an influence does he have on your daily liquid intake?
My daily liquid intake.
Like what you are allowed to drink when you're sitting in that host chair?
I mean, I don't think he really has much of an influence. It's
Really?
usually about 2 water bottles, though.
Okay.
So.
Well, he's always running hot on the big juice.
And the white monster?
Oh yeah. I didn't say it, you did. I didn't say it, you did. Big white monster guy, that Nick Savage. Anyway. All right, OB.
Yeah.
Your idea.
Well, okay, so I was sitting around thinking, actually last week, what column can I write for this week? And I was...
Can we start with what you text me about? 'Cause I thought that's great.
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Yeah, cut you off. So you text me, and you were thinking about column ideas because we're in the dog.
I'm on vacation, of course.
We're on the dog days, right? And
Right.
kind of the wheels are spinning, and Olin texted me and said, hey, I want to write a column about some of the high schools in the state of Texas that have been the most fruitful for A&M in recruiting. And so you'd sent me a couple in Dallas, and we think you maybe sent Lufkin. That would Lufkin would definitely be up there. I thought that was so interesting, though, because there was a time when Jason and I were kind of going around the areas that we cover and really going around the state of Texas and looking at not the high schools that have been the most fruitful, but just how A&M's done in those areas. Because when Mike Elko got here, one of the things that was a key initiative for him on the recruiting front was kind of re-energizing A&M's presence in Dallas-Fort Worth. And we know how productive some of those schools have been for A&M in the past. So what we were doing, Jason and I, was just kind of going by the region and looking at some of the best players that A&M has gotten. And so that got me thinking about some schools. I sent you Fort Bend Marshall. Manville's been pretty productive. But when you start getting into like San Antonio, Austin, and westward into that central, I don't even call that central Texas, more like the hill country area, A&M doesn't go out there a ton, but when they do, the hit rate's been very high. So what in your limited research there, have you found some schools that are for sure going to be at least amongst the discussion for the best ones?
Well, some of them that I have to admit I didn't do a whole lot of research because I was still on vacation. I was just coming up with ideas. Beaumont Westbrook?
Beaumont Westbrook be interesting.
Would that be, Christian Michael, I can go up back.
Bryce Anderson.
Calvin Collins going
Dan
way
Moore.
back, so
yeah,
that's pretty good. You have 4 really good players from one place, that's doing really well. Now, I know Calvin Collins, you're going all the way back to the mid-'90s, but.
No, I mean, I think when you look at this, I think modern history would be what, from 90s on?
Yeah.
The last 30 years?
Yeah. So, I think, West, and there's probably somebody I'm forgetting.
West Orange Stark?
West Orange Stark, probably.
Kerry Franks, Kevin Smith. Chris Cole.
I forgot about Chris Cole.
So, I'm just thinking of my neck of the woods down there in Southeast Texas. Those would be 2 that Jasper.
Okay. Red Bryant was really good.
Keati Armstrong's here.
Okay,
you had there was the DB. I'm missing one. God,
Horn? No.
Shun Horn is Shun Horn from Jasper? Let's look it up. We have the internet.
So anyway, I thought Lufkin's an obvious one.
Lufkin is definitely.
DeSoto is an obvious
Shun Horn,
one.
Jasper.
That's right. Don't mind like a steel trap. So maybe one of those Arlington schools.
See, DFW, I'm going to be way less versed in. It would be, I'll ask Jason some ideas. Allen would be certainly
They're
up there.
probably good to everybody.
Yes. I think if off the top of my head, without going through all the rosters in the 90s and 2000s, just the recency bias says DeSoto, Lufkin. But Lufkin was a lot of the 2000s because they haven't gone back out there in a while to get.
Well, some of the guys that come to mind are Jaworski, Reggie McNeil,
Terrence Keel,
Terrence McCoy,
Eric McCoy. Yeah, that'd be the most recent one, I believe.
And
hit rate's been really high.
They had a receiver.
Is it E.J. Schenkel?
No. I can't think of his name, but I know he caught a pass and fumbled the first play of the season. And I can't remember his name. You can go all the way back to a few. Now, this wouldn't be in the timeline, but I think it all started with this big, brontosaurus-looking offensive tackle named Matt McCall, who was 6'9", back before anybody was that big.
Yeah.
I think he might have played for Jackie. But Lufkin's all. And there's some defensive linemen. I know there's a defensive lineman, short, round defensive lineman.
Drew Parks.
Wasn't he a Lufkin guy?
Yeah, he was part of the Reggie McNeil. I think that was it was a tandem thing.
So
was Arkeith Brown was El Campo, I believe.
I don't know that. Anyway,
there was Alton Dixon.
Alton
Dixon was the DB.
There's there's some, you mentioned maybe Converse Judson. So anyway.
All right, we're going to go to break. When we come back, we're going to start looking at what A&M has done, actually landed. What did you say? Over the past 10 years, maybe?
Yeah, I looked at the past 10 recruiting classes.
Okay, we're going to look at that, where A&M has felt, and just, again, trying to put this run that Mike Elko and company are on into a little bit of a historical significance. On the other side of the break, we're just getting started here on a Wednesday morning on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers.
5.
All right, welcome back. Headed toward the bottom of the 8 o'clock hour on a Wednesday morning. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers, Ryan Brauninger, Olin Buchanan here in the Go Hour, presented by the Warehouse, CC Creations. OB?
Yeah.
Where do you want to start this thing? So we're going to look at the last probably 10 years of Texas A&M recruiting classes. The Aggies currently, with their class of 2026, 24 total commitments, and according to 24/7 Sports composite rankings, sitting at number 3. Depending on how the rest of this thing works out, they could get to number 1. But regardless, they have put themselves in a position in this class to sign one of, if not perhaps the best class that A&M's ever had.
Yeah, mate, because, of course, we never know.
And this, look, let's go into this discussion understanding that the real value of recruiting classes isn't on the front end.
Right.
It's when they leave.
In fact, I have a theory, and you're closer and know more on recruiting than I do. But my theory is if a third of the guys you sign are what you'd call hits, I mean, significant players, that's successful. You're looking, because in my opinion, about a third aren't going to pan out, and about a third maybe, on the team, contribute depth guys. But if you can get about a third of them to really be good, then you're going to have a really good class.
I would agree with that, and it's what makes that 2022 class. And it's so funny because people get real fired up when you talk about this run that A&M's on. And I, on Monday when I hosted, I said this is the best run that I've seen A&M go on since that 2022 group. And everybody's like, oh, well, how did that turn out? And I'm like, look, if you want to get in the conversation to get into the playoff, you got to sign classes like that. 2022 and the disintegration of that class is an outlier.
Well, I'll say this. It
didn't work out that year.
It doesn't matter how good the guys are or how high guys are projected. Production is what matters. But are you're going to say, well, just because this year, if you're going to say, if you're going to dismiss the guys you may get this year because of what happened in 2022, I'd say, all right, tell me right now which guys that are committed right now that you want to throw away. Because
that's a fair question.
So, it's okay. It's like saying because Billy Joe Tolliver wasn't a good quarterback from Texas Tech, wasn't a good quarterback in the NFL.
Patrick Mahomes.
So let's don't ever take Patrick Mahomes because he went.
There are a lot of A&M fans that have that. While we're talking recruiting, they have that attitude toward North Shore. Well, A&M's never got. It's been since Tiki Hardeman. And I'm like, that doesn't mean you should stop recruiting that school.
Right. Because they put out actually really good players. You just got to get one that comes here and plays well.
Right.
But yeah, to me, that's ridiculous. I'm not going to take, a guy from, let me see. Well, what if you said, we've never had a good player from Kerrville Tivy. So, or the last guy from Galveston Ball wasn't very good. So why are we going to take this 3-star Evans kid?
Yeah, the past is never fully predictive of the future, right? It can be an indicator, but it's never, it would be foolish. And it's no different than what A&M should know their place. That you get that a lot. What does that even mean?
Yeah, what is that? Well, and that's so people when A&M.
Clemson's a great example of that, by the way.
Yeah,
because Clemson was kind of waffling in that 8-4, 9-3.
Yeah, everybody said it was Clemsoning. Clemsoning was a phrase, was a term. And then they finally broke through.
Yeah.
Miami, a lot of people don't know this. You may not be old enough. Miami was seriously discussing disbanding their program, just dropping football because they were so bad. And then they hired Howard Schnellenberger, and they upset Nebraska, and I think it was 84. They won the national championship, went on that run, and suddenly became a powerhouse. And that's the frustrating thing about A&M is because you have even more advantages than Miami or Clemson, and haven't capitalized on them. Now, Mike Elko might be the guy that finally capitalizes on them. So that's kind of where I first started thinking about this column that I'm going to write today was that classes of 2022 was ranked number 1, and the national, if you remember, the national reaction was, oh, you know they're cheating. There's no way A&M should be number one. What's A&M doing? I'm like, if you'll go back just in the last, I looked at the last 10 years, and A&M's every recruiting class has been ranked 18th or higher. But in the last 7 years, A&M's recruiting class has been ranked in the top 10 6 times, 6 out of 7 years. And the 1 year they were 16 was Mike Elko's first year.
The transition class.
It's very, it's very common the first year of a coach, because you got guys that don't know the coach. I haven't got a relationship with you. You do a lot of the recruiting when they're juniors, and so anyway. But I was asking you based on my theory that a good recruiting class you can get about a third of them. So I was looking at the 2005 class. I'll just start there. I'm sorry. I was looking at the
2005. We're going way back.
No, I meant to say I was looking at the 2019 class, which was ranked 5th in the nation. And so they signed 27 guys. So I'm thinking if 9 of them are hits. So I want to see if there's 9 hits in here, and they have to be hits at A&M. So DeMarvin Leal, yes, hit. Baylor Cup.
Not to cut you off, DeMarvin Leal would be from a high school that I think you could throw in that discussion. Converse Judson been very good to A&M. Yeah. Kenyon Green was your next one?
No, Cup. No. Kenyon Green.
Yes.
Hit. Damani Richardson.
Yes.
Hit. Dylan Wright.
Dalen Wright. No.
Late great Brian Williams. No. I mean, he was always hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Eric Young. No.
Could have been
Andre White.
I mean, he played quite a bit on a
started a couple of years. So I think that's a hit.
Yeah.
4. Isaiah Spiller.
Yep.
5. Elijah Blades.
He was a JUCO guy. I would say no.
No. Kashun Brown, I don't remember him. Cam Brown, no, he didn't stay. Braden Mowry, no. Jalen Weidemeyer?
Yep.
That's a yes, so we're up to 6. Zach Calzada. I'm going to have to say no. Terrion Lee, no. Anaya Smith, I think that's a huge yes. Yeah. Chris Russell.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't think you have to be a star player, but he did contribute.
Mm-hmm.
Remember that block punt at Mississippi State? Kenyon Jackson, no. Chase Lane.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is that? 8, 9? That's 9. All right. And then, it finishes.
Layden Robinson.
It finishes with, I don't think Layden is in this class.
Yeah, he is.
Did I miss him? I sure did. Layden Robinson. I went over. So there's 10. So yeah. And you know what? That's the class that that was part of that, big part of that 9-1 team that finished.
Absolutely. And again, like you try to determine class value. What was that class ranked? Class 5th. And so you'd say that's good hit rate. They were good on the front end. They were pretty stinking good on the back end, right?
Yeah.
And that's how you judge recruiting classes. And, while we're here, let's just go to 2020.
All right. I have 2020.
Class was ranked?
2020 is ranked 6th. Now, you're going to have, is that 26 guys? So we're looking for about 8.
Keep track of this, Reese.
All right.
So Jalen Jones hit 1. Damon Demas?
No.
He hit, but not the right way.
You know what? Hold on. Timeout.
Not the right way. And he got hit. And by the way, I will applaud Robert Ferguson for that. Antonio Johnson.
Hold on, dude. You kidding? Hey, Chris, we're going to go to break. On the other side, we'll jump back into the 2020 recruiting class. Olin is, it's July 8th, 9th, whatever it is, on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. We'll be right back.
Let's talk a little Snaps clothing. David Nuno here, and I love wearing Snaps clothing everywhere. I've got the flannel on right now. You've seen me in the Tailgater collection with the A&M gear. It is fantastic. If you see me around town with my sons, Christian and Cruz, they've got a bunch of Snaps gear. When they have big games for Consol, they wear nice clothes, so they wear their Snap stuff. And I'm telling you, with baseball season here, let's all kind of go looking stylish and fit to the games there at Olsen wearing the Snaps clothing. As a reminder, they are the only official licensed Texas A&M Pearl Snaps maker out there. Their Tailgater collection is built for game day with breathable, moisture-wicking fabrics to keep you comfortable while you rep your Aggies in style. Now, whether you're watching the game from home or maybe you're in attendance, you're tailgating, whatever it may be, you got to make sure you head to snapsclothing.com to see everything they have to offer. It is fashionable, it is awesome, and you're going to love it.
We have some special brains in this office, and one of them sitting right here to my left, Olin Buchanan. Ryan Brauninger back on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers inside the Uralo Insurance Studios. You and Matthew Dawson, special brains.
Completely different.
But special. Special does not mean, it just means unique.
Okay. Well, Dawson's just a genius. I don't know what you'd call me.
Wait, that was that not a bizarre interaction we had during the break? Matthew Dawson just walks in. He's like, who's going to play edge for A&M? I'm like, Cassius Howell, Ryland Kennedy,
Marco
Jones. I'm sure. Whom else am I missing? Deion Hayes, maybe?
Deion Hayes. He looked good in the spring game.
All right. So
All
the
right,
abrupt
Jalen,
ending to last segment, we were going through the 2020 recruiting class, hits and misses.
We're looking for 8 hits.
Out of the 2020 recruiting class.
Hits on the field. 8 of them.
Jalen Jones hit
1.
on the field.
Antonio Johnson.
Yes.
Yes, 2. Donnell Harris.
Injuries, no.
Great tweets, but no, better tweets than tackles. Devon Achane. Heck
Huge
yeah,
hit, yeah.
Huge hit. McKinley Jackson.
Huge hit.
Huge hit. Haynes King.
No.
Unfortunately, he hit the guy in the wrong jersey too many times.
You're on one today. Hey, he's on a roll. Just let it keep going.
This is Edgerrin Cooper.
Huge hit.
Huge hit. Antonio Doyle.
No.
Fidel Diggs.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a hit. How many we got? 6 hits. We need 2 more. Moose Muhammad.
I'd say hit, even though.
Hey, just for that LSU game.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to give.
It can be a hit and still be disappointing.
Yeah, I think that's you know what? That's kind of a check swing single. That's an infield hit.
The rest, we don't have to go through these line by line, but in the rest of the class, I'd say Isaiah Rakes hit.
Rakes is a hit, and
Ernest
Crownover. He started. He played. You know, I remember that touchdown catch he made against. He doesn't have, again. He's a single. I mean, there's some home runs in there. The thing is on that one.
There's
on
9.
that class,
We got 9 Reese.
The guys though that
the top end was
there's home runs.
Yes.
You know, A-Chain's a home run.
McKinley
Jackson's a home run. Edgerrin Cooper's a grand slam.
Antonio Johnson. There's some really good players.
And Fidel Diggs led you in sacks a couple times. So he's an extra base hit. So anyway, I guess what we're getting at that is what you are looking for in this class that they're assembling now is if you can get a third of them to be big-time hits, then you can expect big-time success.
One of the things that is so different about this class, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong, all I'm saying is that it's different, is a lot of those names that we just went through, and we could go through the rest of them, were from the state of Texas or Louisiana, like they were in the typical footprint. This class right now, and especially, you know, if they're able to land Lamar Brown, who's a Louisiana kid, and they've got a kicker committed from Louisiana, so that state's already checked off, but they're in on Tylen Wilson, a safety from Pascagoula, Mississippi. You'd add another state to this class. They're in on Tank Jones, an edge rusher out of Alabama. That add another state to this class. And as you go through it, you're looking at California, Georgia, Texas, Ohio, Utah, Florida, New Jersey, like Arizona. They've just gone and got from every part of the country. And one of the things that if the trend continues this way, and I don't see why it wouldn't when you look at kind of where they're looking to close out some of these recruitments, but what I would like to do and have the people in the back make for signing day, if it continues this direction, I'd like a map of the United States with just pins of where all these guys are from in this class. And they're going to get the top players from these states. Like, these aren't borderline, like maybe, you look at Brandon Harrington, and he had the West Coast schools drooling over him at the top. What's going to be interesting is with these Georgia kids is, does Kirby ever really say, I have to go get one of them, and then A&M's got to hold them off? So it's an incredible job of recruiting, but there's still huge battles to be fought here to get these guys over the line. And, probably not, I'm probably not breaking any news here, but Ohio State's going to start making a push for Storm Miller. No. What does that do? And by the way, Storm Miller right now, currently toward the bottom of the class. Caden Johnson out of Fort Bend Marshall, currently toward the bottom of the class. Both of those guys are starting to get major attention. So A&M went early, said, hey, we identified him, we like him, he checks all of the boxes that we look for in a linebacker, Caden Johnson, and an elite athlete. Like, he's got all these measurables that we really like. We're going to go, we don't care who else is in on him, whether he's a take at these schools or not. We're going to try to get him. And they did. And then what's happened since is that these other schools, these big-time power programs in the region are going, A&M may have been onto something here.
Yeah.
And so that, I think, when you look at the job that A&M has done with once they get the kids on campus and closing out recruitments via the relationships on the coaching staff, via the relationships on the recruiting staff, you'd have to check that box. Giant A+ right now. But I also really like what they've done from a scouting department. Really, really like that. And so how is this number 3 ranking with potential go to number 1? How has it happened? Well, it's not just one factor. And if you just want to say, well, A&M's paying a bunch of money, that's shortchanging the job of actual recruiting.
Well,
that's being
everybody's
done.
paying a bunch of money.
Right, exactly. And, and a lot of people don't like now that everybody's got money. And specifically this school in West Texas that's causing a lot of people to go up in arms.
I said it yesterday. Texas Tech, people up in arms. Don't hate the player, hate the game.
Mm-hmm.
Texas Tech is playing the game.
They are.
And quite frankly, good job, Red Raiders. Now, that might blow
Cody
up in
Campbell.
your face.
It's Cody Campbell.
Well, I know.
And with Cody Campbell, the crazy thing is he's on Twitter just tweeting. Like, he was openly – Texas Tech's a real player for the number 1 edge rusher in the country in the class of 2027 out of the state of Georgia. When's the last time that's ever happened? Never, right? And Cody Campbell, the guy that sold Double Eagle and is now their predominant booster, and is the reason why they got the softball pitcher there and they made a run to the final. And so he's seeing a good return on his investment, and he's openly tweeting about this kid coming to Texas Tech.
Right. Hey, everything is...
So I said this because everybody's like, well, what are the rules? Who cares anymore? Yeah. Like, what are you talking about rules? The Big 12 media days, those coaches went in there yesterday, and they basically said, for all intents and purposes, one of the main things coming out of Big 12 media days was, we don't know the rules. Well, if nobody knows them, how are you going to play by them?
Right.
And don't be in a hurry to line up to play by them.
I would, I have no problem.
What is your old saying? If Olin Buchanan hits the lottery?
Yeah, A&M's not going to lose any players. Because look, I'm old, right? How much time do I got left? I want.
Well, you said you were dying on the set earlier.
If I hit the lottery, I'm going to do things that are going to make me happy. I'm going to be on a yacht. I'm going to be acting stupid, but I'm also going to be looking. I'm going to be looking for A&M to win championships. And so I'm going to be when I hit the lottery. It has to be the big one. I'm going to be the Cody Campbell of A&M. I'm going to be.
Boy, you want to talk about wild tweets.
You are 6 numbers away from me being your sugar daddy. 6 numbers.
All right, Chris, we're going to break again. We come back, we'll close the go hour. It's been one for the record books, one for the highlight reels today, this morning, Wednesday morning, TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers.
Hey everyone, David Nuno and Olin Buchanan and OB. Typically, we start off the show in this section, and we call it the Holistic Planning Cool
The cool zone, yeah. It's pretty cool.
What do we know about holistic planning?
Well, a lot of cool stuff. For instance, holistic planning can help you with your investments.
I love that.
They can help you with your taxes. So
I don't like paying taxes.
You can get that money from your investments and they keep it. They'll help you keep it away from the government.
Yep.
Not all of it, but more of it. And then they'll even help you with your estate planning. When you're old like me, you got to make sure some of that money you made is there for when you want to retire and just enjoy the rest of your life.
You want your estate to be planned. But they also do something else.
Yeah, well, if you are, like, say, a sports fan, and you've always wanted to...
Everybody watching us, right?
Yeah. And you want to always dream of being an owner, well, in a certain way you can, because they will broker the deal for you to invest in pro sports.
Yeah, what you need to do is check out investinprosports.com. That's where you can get all the information if you want to invest in a team. I don't know what team. He'd probably try to buy the Cowboys. I'd try to buy a lot of the Houston teams. Whatever it may be, investinprosports.com. It is holistic planning, and we love hanging out at the Holistic Planning Cool Zone.
It has been an all-time performance from my colleague, Olin Buchanan, this morning.
Has it really?
Yes, she's been on your game. See, when you're good every day, though, it's hard to know whenever you've been elite. You've been elite today.
I make one joke.
One? Listen, you had some good ones leading up to baseball season.
Yeah, I was kind of proud of that. But that was low-hanging fruit.
It was. It was. Reese, what has been your favorite part of the Go Hour this morning?
It's hard not to say Olin's comments.
See?
I feel like that's also low-hanging fruit, and I'll take it.
It's the easiest one to pick.
You know what? One time, I think the greatest compliment I ever got was from, I can't remember who it was from, but it was actually told to me from Lucci. And Lucci said it was from a friend of his up in Dallas, who I think is an attorney. And I can't remember the name of the friend. He said, Olin's always one word away from a lawsuit, but he just never gets there. I don't think that
at least on air.
I don't think that was the case today. Well, I don't think it'd be a lawsuit unless it's on air.
You never know nowadays who's recording what.
But I don't think I said anything that outrageous today.
No. It was good. I'm just giving you a hard time.
I know.
Don't start getting scared.
I'm fine.
I would say that, again, I would say to try to tie this back into A&M recruiting, with this class, because of the skill sets that they've got coming in, it's hard for me to imagine right now. And I think you got to look back at what they did in the 2025 class and what we've heard about that group since they've been on campus, not just in terms of their talent. They think they did really well and their hit rate's going to be really high, but they feel like they hit on personality and character stuff.
Yeah, I think that's something that's different from 2022.
And so if that remains the case in this 2026 class, and for all intents and purposes, like I don't know some of these kids from Ohio and Georgia as well as I know some of the Texas kids, but I do know how much of a premium has been put on that in terms of their evaluation of the talent being brought in. You would imagine that those percentages of hit rates in these classes would go up. Now, in today's college football, attrition is almost a mandatory practice. Not a mandatory, but it's
retention. Is key.
Yeah, and I think that's again, the only media days that I've listened, paid any attention to were Big 12 media days, and I talked about it in the last segment. But Dillingham at Arizona State, Kenny Dillingham yesterday said that I'm not into recruiting, I'm into retention. And so
you better
I don't
be into both.
Yeah, that's what I was like. Well, that kind of like half the battle there, but I get what he's saying. Like it's important for him to keep the players that he's recruited.
The third that hit for him, it's important to keep those guys. Jalen Daniels hit for Arizona State, but they couldn't retain him.
Oh, yes. I get what you're saying. Right. And I think that's the idea. You know, A&M didn't have a mass exodus.
Yes.
Off of last year's team. Now, Noah Thomas was a big loss, but you didn't have the volume of players leave that you had somewhere else. So that tells me that even if some of these guys, and look, those kids that are kind of on the depth chart on the offensive line, when they see 7 old returners come back and none of them leave, I think that says something about what you're doing, the culture of, especially the culture of the room that Adam Cushing's got. But it's inevitable. You're going to see some of these guys depart. What you don't want is guys depart early in their career that you think are going to be really impact players. And from the other side of the coin, I'm going, if I'm planting a tree and every 8 months I dig up that tree and its roots and I put it in new soil, does that tree grow as efficiently as it could?
Well, I don't know. I recently planted a peach tree and it's already dying. So I'm probably the last guy to ask about trees and planting.
You got what I was saying, though. Yeah. If you want to prosper into like probably the best version of yourself,
yeah,
give your roots a chance to grow where you're at.
Yeah.
Now A&M's gonna just like everyone else, and you look out there this year. I mean, you think Tyler Onyedeem's going to play? I bet he's going to play. You think Deion Hayes is going to play, and Sam Mpemba and all those guys that they got out of the portal, TJ Searcy, Cassius Howell. There's going to be a lot of guys on the defensive side, but I think when you looked at what Mike Elko walked into when he got here, that's where the necessary improvements had to be made. On offense, you're going to start a lot of guys that have been here and they're homegrown players.
Yes.
And I think when you look at what college football has gone to, and the most successful teams, just off the top of my head, Texas last year, it's a lot of homegrown kids, a lot of them. And to be fair, a lot of their impact players on the offensive side of the ball, especially up front, not highly recruited kids.
Some 3-star guys that some programs just didn't want.
What does that look for?
Some programs just weren't interested in them, and they went to Texas and did real well.
All right, OB, it's a good hour.
All right, I'm glad, enjoyed it. You never got to let Reese give you the updates
on what?
I don't know, and they're all. What's he there for?
I thought we forgot something.
What's he there for?
I'll have plenty of time to get to Reese in the 9 o'clock hour. We got John Harris.
Harris.
We've got Chris Harrington going to join the show.
Good dude.
Kendall Rogers.
Good. Just had a birthday yesterday.
Major League Baseball draft coming up starts on Sunday. So very interesting how that will shape A&M's roster profile going forward, both out of the current roster and the guys incoming.
A lot of interest in that draft.
They're very, very much so.
Hoping guys don't get picked. Some of them.
I hope some of them get picked and get to realize their dreams, but you're also pulling for a talented club here coming back in 2026 for Mike Early and company. All right. Thank you, OB. When we come back, John Harris joins the show. TexAgs Live, 9 o'clock hour, coming your way. presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Welcome back to TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. I'm Ryan Brauninger inside the Rollo Insurance Studios. We're going to start this 9 o'clock hour going out to the Buppy's Catering and Bartending Hotline to talk to a great friend of the program and a guy that I think has one of the coolest jobs on the planet. He gets to stand on the sidelines for the Houston Texans, and he has Mark Vandermeer and Andre Ware in his ear all the time. John Harris. John, good morning.
Good morning, Ryan. Yeah, I would tell you that's the greatest job ever, but there have been a few years where when I hear Mark and Andre in my ears, it hasn't been good stuff. But hopefully, the last couple of years this year will be even better than the last couple of years. But yeah, we have a good time. There's no question about that, man. It is definitely fun. And we got our crew on game days. Robert Hensley and Aaron Rabel, who unfortunately is a Longhorn fan, and we hear about it all the time. But the five of us are Texans radio crew on Sundays, and we have a great time, man. It's a nice little small. It's like TexAgs. It's a small little family away from your family. That's always awesome.
For sure. And Vandermeer calls an incredible game. Like his play-by-play, I'm a huge fan, and he's kind of coined the rock and roll thing. It's so good. Like he's like legitimately, I'm a Texans guy. I'm a Texans fan, John. But listening to Mark call a game is truly enjoyable.
Yeah, it's funny. You know, a lot of people, tell me that, and I agree. And he's so good. It's funny, because other people will bring up rock and roll, and I did too. And he's like, "Hey, I got a formula for it." I'm like, "What? You got a what? What do you mean you got a formula for it?" He goes, I don't do it all the time. And if you pay attention, which I know a lot of people do, they're like, "Yeah, it's true." He saves it for the truly like rock and roll moments. And so he's such a, it's funny because he's so good about it. He doesn't just do it every time there's a touchdown. There are a lot of announcers I know that in the league, and I've gotten to know a number of them throughout the league. They got the same calls, but it's such an interesting job. And I've gotten to know so many of them from throughout the league. Paul Allen with the Vikings and Jeff Joniak with the Bears. And they have such distinctive voices, and you resonate, that voice resonates for your team. Brad Sham for the Dallas Cowboys, for a lot of Cowboys fans, I mean, he's been doing it forever. When you hear a different voice doing a Cowboys game, 10, 15 years down the road or whatever Brad has done, it's going to sound so foreign to you. And I always think about, man, what's it going to sound like, when Mark decides to hang him up with the Texans? It'll be so different and so strange because he's called every single minute of action for the Texans from the beginning. So it's a fun job. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of work that goes into it, but we have a blast on Sunday for sure.
Hey, and speaking of every minute, that's a great segue, unbeknownst to you, into what the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about today, John, because look, you've talked about Christian Kirk and you've talked about the Texans and kind of the promise of the roster going forward. But what I want to ask is, you have been around and watched professional football for a long time now. And you guys have like these OTAs, like there's football kind of, even in the offseason, you have these spurts of football, of actual football things happening. Whereas the college player, once they're done with their spring game, they don't get real football until fall camp starts. What I'm asking you, John, is have you seen an adjustment period for these rookies that are having year-long 365 days, not all of them, but the majority of their year is actual football stuff. How much adjustment is there to that for these rookies?
Well, I think for the rookies, the toughest thing is you go from this working out for the draft and putting yourself in the best physical light. How strong am I? How fast am I? You put yourself in that mind frame where you're practicing in some sense for the test. And I think it's a lot like the STAR test in Texas. All these kids got to take STAR tests. And I was always opposed to it. My parents are both teachers. I was a teacher for a while. And you felt like as a teacher, you were just teaching to the test, as opposed to, we need to teach to become better students, better math students, better history buffs. Better English students, better writers, but you were teaching to a test, and a lot of rookies are doing that. They're being taught to get good at the test, and the test being the combine. And it was funny because when Marvin Harrison a couple of years ago just decided, I'm not doing that. I'm not testing. I'm going to go improve I'm going to become a better football player. Now his rookie year wasn't great, but I thought it was, in some sense, the right thing to do, because Marvin Harrison was going to be a top 5 pick no matter what he did, as long as he didn't, say something political or something racist or something like that, which is not Marvin Harrison at all. He was going to be a top 5 pick. And so I really appreciate the fact that he wanted to get better at his game, his all-around game, and not just get better at the shuttle or get better running the 40. Because as many people have said, how do you get better? How does the 40 get you better? It just shows how fast you are, which is great. But how many times do you run a 40 in a game? So, there's some of that, and I think a lot of rookies deal with that. I think the biggest adjustment period for players that come down here, we get players from the Big Ten, we get players from the Pac Northwest, we get players from the Boston College area, Penn State. They come down here and they got to deal with this monster of the weather, and they get hit in OTAs, and they're like, I've never seen anything like this before. And then they get into training camp, and they're like, oh my God. And so the whole first year for them is kind of an adjustment, because summer weather to them is going all the way to December. So they've got to deal with that. So I think there are a lot of adjustments that end up having to be made. But the football part, becoming a better football player, they get enough time in OTAs, kind of like spring practice. They kind of get a little bit of time. Now they're on whatever he calls a 5-week break or 6-week break, but it's really not a break. It's really just time away from the building. But guys are staying in shape, et cetera. But I think the biggest adjustment for guys, as rookies, is just that, going from you finish your college season, you jump right into draft prep, and then it's draft prep 24/7, 365. Then you get drafted. Now all of a sudden you go to that city and you jump right into OTAs. So there's no stopping. And so eventually you get to the end of that rookie year, and I've talked to a number of rookies, they get to the end of that rookie year and they are gassed. Yep. Like they got nothing left. And it's all of a sudden, I am going to Antigua for 2 weeks because they need that break, and now they got a little money in their pocket. And that's really when, to me, it kind of, I don't say it gets tough for them, but they've got to make a big adjustment, because now they've got money and now they've got time in their hands. And the good ones understand what to do with it. The ones that don't make it end up kind of falling by the wayside because they fall prey to a lot of those things. So it's really an interesting sort of time frame, for these rookies when they jump into the league. But to me, that jump from first year to second year, that's when you really see the big jump for players, because there are some guys that understand, I don't have to go to class anymore. I could just go work out. I could just go watch film. Yeah, do it to your heart's content. And some dudes just jump in and they never turn back. They end up being great players. And some guys are like, man, I got millions. I can go to the casino whenever I want. I can go on vacation whenever I want. I can give my girlfriend a $2 million engagement ring. Yeah, those are the ones that end up struggling.
Well, every time we have you on, John, I like to kind of draw similarities to what you see there in Houston to what's going on here at Texas A&M. And I think as we head into this 2025 football season, the biggest similarity that I can see between the Aggies and the Texans is what is in the head coaching position. And you get to see D'Amico Ryans, a defensive guy, be involved with the defense every day. We've heard Mike Elko now. He's been adamant that he is going to become more involved in the day-to-day of the defense here at Texas A&M this season. What do you think that looks like for Mike Elko now that you've seen it from D'Amico there in Houston?
I think it's an interesting transition also, Ryan, for head coaches at every level. I think for a lot of coaches that are offensive coaches, I think maybe it's more accepted across football that a guy's an offensive coach, the Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan types. I think that's been more accepted, and maybe because it's been more successful, that those coaches end up getting the Super Bowls. Andy Reid's an offensive coach. People forget Bill Belichick was a defensive coach, but for some reason we forget about Belichick. But for some reason, defensive coaches that turn into head coaches, or defensive-minded coaches that turn into head coaches, they kind of fight that perception, if you will. I think D'Amico's done a nice job of kind of balancing that, but I think he realized after the second year, you know what, I need to be a little bit more involved in the offense. And I noticed him during OTAs being a little bit more involved. And when people ask about OTAs, that's basically our spring practice. And so I noticed him being a little bit more involved with the offense. He hired an offensive coordinator, and he brings in Nick Caley. And I think what he really would like to have is kind of a head coach of the offense, head coach of the defense. And obviously he's the head coach of the defense and the team. But, there were instances last year, I know that he was frustrated not only with just the play call or the execution of the play call, but just execution of the operation was not great from time to time. And why was it breaking down? And it wasn't just Bobby Slowick. It was kind of systemic all the way through every unit of the offense. And, CJ being in his second year, and I think CJ is a leader on his team, but I think last year's team probably needed him to be a little bit more of the vocal, forceful leader that he's become going into year 3. I think the offensive line was an absolute mess. Receivers, we lost Diggs and Dell, within 5-6 weeks of one another. And that was a killer because we had this big 3 wide receivers. And so there was just not enough coaching. There's a lot of blackboard stuff, whiteboard stuff. We draw it up on a whiteboard. This is what we do. And it looks good. It looks creative. We needed more coaching. We needed a little bit more motivation. We needed a little bird to saddle, if you will. D'Amico can give that. And I think D'Amico has spent a little bit more time with the offense and maybe can tell Nick Caley what he sees. But I think he was just spending practices being very observational of the offense. How does he feel it runs with Nick Caley? And at some point, stepping back into that role of I call plays on Sunday. And yes, I'm the head coach, but I am the ultimate leader of this team. So I got to make sure I'm understanding the issues, what's going on with this offense. And it wasn't as if he wasn't in tune to what was going on with the offense. That's obviously why he made the changes and, ended up firing one of his great friends in football. That's the hardest thing to do. I think for Mike, just having the ability, and this goes the other way, because obviously having a defensive coordinator that calls plays, when you have a head coach that has all this institutional knowledge of that side of the ball, you can't forget that. At least in Houston, D'Amico is using his brain to give us, a plan each and every week. So Elko can't forget that. He can't just be hands-off on his defense as well. He's got to be as involved with defense as he is offensively. But I think both of them have a pretty good handle on how you run a football team, not just a defense. And I think that's going to serve both programs, both organizations in the long run because they have that. It isn't just, he's a defensive guy that ends up with the greatest quarterback and stumbles on the greatest quarterback of all time who can just run the offense the way that he would like it to be, like it was in New England with Bill Belichick. Now, Belichick knew enough offensively, but he ends up with Josh McDaniels and Tom Brady. That relationship was fantastic for years. And so that's what D'Amico's hoping he's got. Now, obviously, in college, it changes, 2-3 years down the road, but you got to hope that Colin Klein and insert quarterbacks named here ends up having that relationship that Elko can step away, go check on the defense, make sure it's running the way that it wants, and so he can be in that CEO capacity, yet contributing to both sides of the ball, the knowledge he has of both sides of the ball. And I think defensive coaches are great for offensive coaches to go in and say, hey, whatever you just came up with, this isn't going to happen because this linebacker's going to drop here. They're going to be in 3 buzz. They're going to cut this off. They're going to jump on this route. They're going to ride number 3 up the seam. You're not going to be able to get this ball off like you think. And to be able to have that on the A&M side and Houston side, I think is a great thing for both those sides of the ball. So I think it's going to end up being a good thing for both down the road. But I think it does take a little bit of adjustment. I think they've gone through that, and they're kind of hit their stride, hopefully, this year in those roles.
Real quick, got a couple of minutes left before I get you out of here. Because you brought his name up a couple of times, what do you think, how do you envision Bill Belichick year 1 in Chapel Hill going?
I think once he gets to football, I think he'll be fine. I think he'll be okay.
It's been a little bit
football.
Yeah, it's been a little bit not football stuff has been a little head scratching.
Yeah. Yes. Yet we are full-blooded males. We understand, in a sense, how that could possibly happen. But I think, here the challenge for Bill, I don't think the challenge is, a lot of coaches, college coaches now the challenge for them is all this NIL transfer portal stuff. They were already coaching in college and had a way of doing things, and all of a sudden this comes in, and now you've got to change completely. Belichick jumped into the middle of all that and was like, well, we were doing this in the NFL, so I already know how to do that. Now I just got to coach these college kids, and that's where I think it gets interesting. He jumps into a conference where North Carolina can win it. It's not the SEC. It's not even the Big Ten. You can go win that conference if you somehow upset Florida State or Miami or SMU, Clemson. You beat one of those teams. You got a good chance of being 8, 9, 10 wins maybe, and maybe 10 wins. And you're Belichick, you get into the playoffs somehow. But the part for him that I think is going to be interesting is the recruiting aspect and how they go about it. How many transfers versus 4 years? How does he go about doing that? But I think once they start coaching ball, I think he's going to end up being okay. Now, I think first year is probably going to be a little bit of adjustment. It might be 5-7, it might be 6-6. But I think a bowl game for them would be huge because then he gets those 15 extra practices on top of spring practice. Now he's kind of getting the system down. And I think he'll be even better in that second year as he was up in New England. That was a big deal in New England. The second year, they ended up going to the Super Bowl and winning it. So I think that's one thing that he'll be able to do. Once the football starts, he'll be okay. Once all this nonsense of the offseason and he gets past that and starts coaching ball, he'll be just fine.
John, always appreciate your time, brother.
All right, Ryan. Take care, buddy. Good seeing you.
John Harris of the Houston Texans joined the show. On the other side of the break, we'll go back out to the Buffy's Catering Hotline, and we'll talk to former Texas A&M defensive lineman Chris Harrington. We're rolling right along on a Wednesday morning. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers.
All right, guys, let's talk about some new partners. Aggieland Hydration and Injectables. They're Aggie owned and operated. They are an mobile IV hydration company that was founded back in 2024. I met with Sheldon and Danny over the last week, and they're awesome people. They really know what they're doing. They're proud to serve Bryan College Station with awesome services like IV hydration, Botox, and even some weight loss options. Whether you're looking for a quick boost of hydration or dehydration preventative, they can tailor an IV cocktail specific to your needs. And on a busy weekend, I know some of you guys might be partying a little bit too much. If that's the case, an IV can be one of the easiest ways to ensure you're receiving all those necessary vitamins and minerals that make you feel better. Their overall mission is to bring a more personalized and accessible wellness option to the broader range of clientele here in the Bryan College Station and Brazos Valley area. To book an appointment or inquire about it, just call them up or text them. 979-217-1561. Again, it's Aggieland Hydration and Injectables. Check them out. It's our friends at Aggieland Hydration and Injectables.
All right, if you're listening to us on this Wednesday morning, don't forget to register for the 2025 TexAgs preseason kickoff, available to all premium and varsity subscribers. The registration link is in Billy's Premium Forum. July 26th at the MSC, we will hear from a couple of head coaches as well as athletes in attendance. If you would like to sponsor a table at the event or donate an auction item, please email sponsor@texags.com. Come kick off the 2025 season with us. Chris Harrington, former Texas A&M Aggie, getting ready to kick off the 2025 season. He joins the show this morning on the Buppy's Catering and Bartending Hotline. Chris, good morning. It's July, man. Football's around the corner. As if you can take me back to your playing days before me and you both started getting the salt and pepper in our beard. What was July like for you as a player getting ready to go to two-a-days under this Texas sun?
It was always the calm before the storm. You know, you get through spring ball, you get through summer conditioning, and then you get a little bit of time to kind of let everything heal up and get ready. You know, I remember I was texting with our text group about like running 110s. I think we ran like 25 110s and they were timed, and it was brutal. We were doing it like 7 a.m, but I just remember being in the best shape of my life doing that. So just really, you know, physically just getting the body right, getting ready to go through this, you know, grueling SEC schedule. You know, I think that's one of the most important things is staying healthy through the season. And now all that, you know, work is done, you know, during the off season as you prepare.
And I think probably this July 4th area of the calendar is your last real break before you've got to come back, and it's 1,000% focus on the season. You talked about managing your body and kind of understanding how you're going to feel. Did that take some time in your career? Like, because when you walk in here and A&M's got a really talented freshman class and a really talented freshman defensive line group, but they haven't been through the rigors of a full SEC college season. Can you remember back when you came in, you're like, hey, I'm invincible, I'm Superman, compared to whenever you left, you're like, hey, I kind of need to understand how to get my body prepared for not just week 1, but for all 12 weeks?
Yeah, I felt like it really wasn't until my junior season that I really was performing, you know, at a high enough level to be a game changer, you know, at A&M. I feel like everything's just advanced so much further from the time, you know, when I was playing. I feel like the things we were doing in college, now they're doing in high school. You know, I feel like just technology and training and specialization. And, you know, I took my boys out to see Jackson Appel last week, and we did a, you know, sprint. They did 4 days of, you know, running mechanics training. And that wasn't stuff that we didn't get that stuff until we got to A&M. But now my 8 and 10-year-old boys are getting to do that stuff at 8 and 10. So I think it's all about like just learning to, you know, recognize your body, to feel your muscles, to learn good running mechanics, to learn explosive movements. You know, I really believe in playing all sports. You know, my boys play a lot of baseball, but right now we're not throwing, we're running, you know, we're playing. We went fishing, you know, the last 2 days down in Port O'Connor. So, you know, we're kind of enjoying our break a little bit. Hopefully the players are enjoying their break a little bit. And I'm excited to get back, you know, just doing some research this morning, kind of preparing for the interview. I'm actually pretty excited about, you know, what we've got coming up this season.
Yeah, and every time we get a chance to talk to you, I think we got to start with your old position, the defensive line.
I lost you on audio.
You lost my mic? Check, check. Check, check. Reese, ask him a question. Freshman defensive line. Can you hear Reese? Check, check.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can't hear you.
We're changing mics out here. Check, check. Check, check.
Now we're good. Yeah, now we're good.
I think my battery may have gone out on that other mic pack. Anyway, all right, back on track. I'm telling you, when I host, Chris, this is what you get, baby. You get what you pay for, and it's free. You know what I'm saying? This is why we call it the B team. Anytime we get you on, we want to talk about the defensive line. And I mentioned those freshmen, that freshman group. But when you go through and look at what A&M's bringing back, Albert Regis, DJ Hicks, the transfers they brought in, there's questions asked about how's A&M going to rush the passer, but I think they've got some answers, huh?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's great to see, we've got, the starting four, coming back. Excited to, see Cassius Howell in his second year at A&M in this program, in this system. He was, at times a difference maker last season. But yeah, you got DJ Hicks, you got Albert Regis in the middle, excited after the spring game, excited about the Colorado transfer, Tyler Onyedem. Excited to watch him play some more. You got TJ Searcy. So it seems like we've added some pieces, through the portal. I'm really excited about this 26 class from a defensive front perspective with the, that we won that recruiting battle on who was that guy just like yesterday from Georgia?
Yeah. So they've got, you're good. They've gotten Tristan Givens was the edge rusher from Georgia. They got Bryce Perry Wright from
Perry Wright.
Yeah.
That's the guy. That's the guy. I think there's a lot of excitement about that. And just exciting about, I know that's for next season. Excited to see some new names popping up. Really excited about, hearing about how, Marco Jones did in the spring game, 5 sacks and 6 tackles for loss. That's a pretty dominant performance from a freshman. So excited to see that group play.
Yeah. And I think a lot of people will look at the defensive line and go, they judge or grade the defensive line on how well they get to the quarterback. But in this league, and something man, like how sound they are in the run game, I think that gets you to those passing opportunities. It gets you those pressure opportunities. Was that something that you had to learn? Was like, hey, this isn't all about making tackles for loss, like gap integrity and leverage, all those things, they have to be learned, correct?
Well, I think it's, just understanding your role in the system and playing within that role. I think at times last season we saw breakdowns occurred that, teams took advantage of. But, that was my MO. I was a system guy. I understood the defense. Like there's a lot of times where I'm like lining up the defensive tackle next to me, reminding him where we're at, what we got going on. And it's just that, that team defense that's, it's built, through camp, through, learning and watching film and making mistakes and fixing it. And, but really, last year we had a defensive front that looked great on paper, but we didn't really see it materialize on the field with sacks and pressures, in the backfield. I think a big part of that comes down to coverage. You talk about the run game, opening up opportunities for, defensive line to get pressure, but just as much as, the secondary, tight coverages, coverage sacks, giving the guys some time to get back there and make an impact. I think that's just as important. So I'm excited to see, the changes to the defense with Elko more involved. I'm excited to see what his role is going to be during fall camp as far as play calling or, impact on the secondary. So yeah, it's, I think for what they did last season with a short time frame and pulling it together, I was impressed. I'm looking forward to getting into fall camp this season and see where they bring it. But if I know, anything about Mike Elko is that he's figuring out how to, patch up those holes and have a solid defensive across the board.
How much can a play caller on defense, like how much effect can he have? Just having his voice heard more, but also on Saturdays, hey, against this look, we're calling this. Like how big of an impact, you've played in defenses, obviously, how big of an impact can a coordinator or a guy calling the plays make?
Well, it's just like, it's like good leadership. It's the instincts, knowing his personnel, knowing his system, having gone through practices, understanding people's, strengths and weaknesses, playing to those. And it's really, I think it comes down to a lot of times, like on game day, it's, it's gut decisions. It's recognizing quickly the adjustments that need to be made, what the other team's doing, what we need to do, but really just having an overall feel for your guys, for your unit. Those things, it takes good leadership, and it takes the ability to see the whole defense, every part of it working together. Cause, we might see something that happens up front, but it really might be, something that went wrong in the back end that opened up an opportunity. So it's really getting the whole group to gel together, getting them to understand their role within the system, and then, executing at a high level consistently. That's really the key.
Chris, I appreciate the time. I apologize for the audio issues. We'll get you back before the season starts, dude.
No, I appreciate it. Thanks, Brauninger. Appreciate it.
Former Texas A&M defensive lineman Chris Harrington. When we come back, we're going to stay on the hotline. We're going to go back, but we're going to switch. We're going to go across Welborn Road to Bluebell Park, and we're going to talk to Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball. Major League Baseball draft gets started on Sunday. It'll have a massive effect on the Aggie baseball roster going into next year. So a lot more to get to still on this Wednesday edition of TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. As a reminder, the final segment of the show is brought to you by Double Dave's. That's at 10:50, but right now, caller number 12 at 979-693-1150. We'll hook you up with your choice of a dozen pepperoni rolls or a large one-topping pizza from Double Dave, serving Aggieland since 1984. Piping hot goodness straight to your door. Just click the link on doubledaves.com and your favorites are on the way. One of our favorites is joining the show here on the Buppy's Catering Hotline. This is TexAgs Live presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Let's go out and talk to Kendall Rogers of Division I Baseball, the Major League Baseball draft underway on Sunday. Kendall, I appreciate you sticking around. I guess this is like a 48-hour delay. Tried to get you on Monday. Had some audio issues, but I appreciate you joining the show.
Yeah.
And look, man, it's the off season for you. I hope you are at least planning on putting your feet up somewhere on the beaches of St. John soon. But
I've already done that, actually.
Have you? Or you're already back? Where'd you go? Cinnamon Bay?
Yeah, we went to St. John. So we actually got back from Omaha, and 24 hours later, we were on a plane back to St. John. So I was there for 5 days. I got to be honest with you. After 5 days there, I was kind of ready to be home. Now I'm kind of ready to go back.
It does that to you, man. As soon as you leave, you're like, man, I could live at that place. I really could.
I definitely could.
Well, I guess so. There's a lot of action, even though college baseball is not going on. There's a lot of stuff for you and your crew and your staff to be looking through from an A&M lens and perspective. Let's just start with the guys that we know are going to be selected: Lavalette, Prager, Lampkin, Kent, those type of guys. Where are you feeling like these A&M kids are going to go in the draft, just based on the conversations you've had?
Yeah, I mean, the most interesting one, obviously, is Jace. I mean, this is a guy that I think I saw the other day where somebody had the Astros getting him in the 20s. I mean, if the Astros get him in the 20s, I mean, that's a steal, because this is a guy that clearly, to me, is a top 5 talent. I get that there's concerns about the swing and miss from late in the season, but I mean, when everything's clicking, he's as good as anybody in college baseball. And so, I mean, I personally, and I think you'd probably agree here, I don't think he falls to the Astros. But, it's just one of the things to kind of keep an eye on. Prager is going to be an interesting one for me. Obviously, much discussed decision last year to turn down the Angels. I think it was 1.2, 1.3 to turn down to go back to school at A&M for one more year. I would think he's probably a 3 to 4 to 5 round kind of guy. Like, I don't think he's a top 2 rounder, but that's probably where he gets selected. I think what's going to be, to me, Bronny, the most interesting is where some of these guys that have a potential to return go.
Yep.
One of the obvious ones you and I have discussed offline, Shane Sadeo, right now, we have him actually going kind of behind Lampkin in the draft. We have him 79 overall in the college crop of prospects. That doesn't put you in the top 2 rounds. And we kind of know that Shane is dead set on, not only being a top 2 round or top 3 round guy, but also getting a pretty good chunk of change to sign. So if let's just say he goes the 79th college prospect, which I think will go a little higher than that. If that happens, I think he's going back to school. And here's why. I mean, I think if you're a pro team, and again, I'm not trying to discount anybody, but I mean, if you're a pro team, you're talking about a guy who, we've seen pitchers, we've scouted pitchers. He's probably a reliever profile at the next level. He's a guy coming off an injury. And so when you have a guy coming off injury and B, he's a reliever profile, I just don't see that as a top 2 round guy right now. Now, if he goes back to A&M with JK next year, performs really well as a starter, stays healthy, the game changes for Shane. But right now, I don't see him as a top two round guy. The other guy for me that's really interesting to watch is Maddox Lotta, the recent pickup out of Cal State Fullerton. We have him in the 120 range in the college crop, which again isn't a top 2 or 3 round type of guy. But as we well know, let's just say he goes in the 7th or 8th round and a team doesn't sign, whatever team drafts him doesn't sign their earlier round picks. Guess what? They have extra money to give Maddox. So, Lotta, as you've accurately kind of pointed out on TexAgs, he's probably a 50-50 guy. I mean, if you're in the 120 range, you could go to school or you could end up signing. I think, none of us really know this, but I mean, what his NIL situation looks like may really matter in the case of a guy like Lotta. If he's got a pretty good deal with A&M, there's probably a lot better chance that he goes to school. If it's just kind of a standard deal, there's probably a little bit better chance he signs. Yeah, and I think it's worth the risk if you're Mike Early and company. Absolutely.
And whenever you look at what Early's been able to do, Kendall, the draft is such it's key for A&M, because if you get, let's say you get Sadeo back and you get Weston Moss and Caden Wilson and Lotta, then you're looking at this A&M team going into 2026 and going, man, there's some pieces there where they could be pretty salty.
There's no doubt. I mean, again, we kind of got, we kind of got bamboozled a little bit last year by, ranking number one, which they should have been ranked number one. I think going into the season, some of the things that happened, I don't think any of us expected. But I do think if you look at the offensive potential of this team, obviously Chris Hakopian, getting him out of the transfer portal, to me, the best hitter that was in the portal. You combine him with a healthy Gavin, a healthy Caden, Jake Dewar, a TCU kickback who was at FAU last year. He had an injury that kind of sidelined him with the Owls last year. But I mean, he was on track to be a 370 to 400 hitter. So, you add a guy like that to the mix, you add a, potential Alada, and we haven't even started talking about the incoming class, which by the way is really talented. It certainly has a couple of draft risks, but I mean, it sounds like they should get a majority of those guys on campus. So offensively, I think this team has a chance to be extremely good. I think pitching wise, I think the draft's going to tell us a lot. I mean, if you get, Moss and you get Sadeo back, which, some people disagree. I think they're getting both back. That would be my prediction as of today. If that happens, you've probably taken care of number one and number two spots in your rotation. More than likely, you add a Carson Bailey into the mix, who, in terms of arm strength, undeniable. I mean, he needs to be more consistent, but I mean, it's a big time frame. It's a big time arm at Baylor from last year. You throw him into the mix, and then some of these other guys they picked up, like MJ Bollinger at the back end. Ethan Darden. I know his numbers aren't great, but he's a guy who has shown flashes of being really good. So A&M is all of a sudden looking to be in a lot better position than maybe they were 3-4 weeks ago.
Yeah, and real quickly, Kendall, you are taking in probably texts from a lot of these college coaches. Yeah. Just the early kind of returns on the House settlement and scholarship situation as it stands today. How do you think it's being received across college baseball?
It's being received pretty well. I think what's happened with the transfer portal, I will say this, I do think schools have gotten smart with how they approach these players. I use Coastal Carolina as a perfect example here. Cam Fluke, if you saw him in the College World Series for Coastal, I mean, it was 90, 96, 98 for 7 innings against LSU. And, he never even considered going to the portal. Why? Because a team like Coastal Carolina prioritized him. So, I think mid-majors have gotten smarter with some of these players. Obviously, there's some good players in the portal, but I don't think it's like you and I are kind of used to, where it's like, whoa, like Braden Montgomery went in the portal. Like, what's going on here? I don't think that's going to happen anymore, but I do think from a roster standpoint, it's going to get very interesting. I kind of point out Tennessee is what the future kind of looks like with a 34-man roster. If you look at the Vols, it's very clear they're making a lot of room for something on their roster with how many players they have in the portal. And the SEC, it sounds like they're going to make teams go down to 34 in December, which if that happens, you've got to cut a lot of players. The question will be, you have the grandfathering clause where you can designate somebody that you feel like you might cut and just keep them on the roster. But the problem is with that is the SEC is going to say, well, if they get any sort of aid, whether that's NIL, scholarship, anything, they count towards your 34. So I just don't understand why schools would keep, let's say, 14 extra guys, or why the kid would even stay there if he's not getting a bit of aid and he's not going to play.
And is there anything around the league, around the SEC, outside of the Tennessee stuff that you brought up really caught my attention, but was there anything else around the league that you're going, okay, like that's noteworthy? I think some of the stuff South Carolina has done has been pretty impressive.
Yeah, they've done a really nice job in the portal. Paul Maneri, kind of like the early situation. I mean, that was one of those deals where I think a lot of people around Columbia thought that they'd be making a coaching change. They stuck with him. And the one thing, kind of what they, frankly, with what A&M's done with Mike is South Carolina's given him a lot of support. I mean, he's gone out there, you got the Alex Philpott kid, the pitcher out of Florida. They've gotten, 8, 9, 10 really good transfers in this cycle. So they are certainly making a push to win big. Mississippi State is another team doing that. The team, ironically enough, and we kind of talked about this last year when A&M got to the national semifinals. Obviously, there are a couple other things that kind of got them off the rails around that time too. But if you look at LSU, they've actually been pretty quiet in the portal. And that just goes to show you, Jay Johnson kind of mentioned at the end of Omaha, but, while we're in here trying to win a national championship, like everybody else is getting every player out of the portal.
Yeah.
And so LSU, ironically enough, has been really quiet in the portal. So you kind of wonder if the future of college baseball is a team wins a national championship and the next year they're just a little bit down. Kind of like Tennessee, this year, they were really good, but they weren't anywhere near the level they were last year. And you just kind of wonder if that's going to kind of be the standard moving forward.
Yeah, they're at the mercy of the calendar, though, right? Like, when else are you going to have the baseball transfer portal? And unlike football and unlike basketball, it's compressed. The season's over in June. The semester starts in August. What else are these guys going to do? Like, I don't know that there's much wiggle room here.
There really isn't. You could make an argument that you need to move the draft around, but dude, we've moved the draft around like 3 or 4 times. I don't think anybody ever is going to be happy with that. I think MLB loves having it as part of the All-Star game. You get media involved in the draft that otherwise you would never get involved. But yeah, other than that, in terms of stories around the SEC, I think the other thing that I've talked to a lot of coaches about is, the elephant in the room, which is kind of A&M. I think the addition of Cliff Pennington is going to be big. It's really interesting. You and I had talked about this when they hired him, and obviously I have a great deal of respect for Penny, but there are a lot of coaches around the league who were like, man, that's a really good hire for them. When I watched them last year, the main issue I kind of saw was infield defense and some strategy in the infield. Like, he's going to be a game changer for them. And also, by the way, he's a really good recruiter. So there are a lot of coaches around the league that I thought took notice of A&M adding Cliff Pennington.
Kendall, appreciate your time, dude. And
you got it, brother. Be good.
I'll be next time I go to St. Thomas, I'll send you some pictures from the beach to let you know I'm there.
Oh, there we go. we'll just keep trading them back and forth.
I like it. Kendall Rogers. Kendall Rogers of D1Baseball. Whenever we come back, we will close the 9 o'clock hour, get you ready for recruiting country. Hey, put Reese Nygren to work. 979-693-1150. Get your questions in for myself and Jason Howell, the Aggies recruiting on the football side, on a roll. A lot more to get to. We come back, we'll close the hour. TexAgs Live presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. All right, real quick to close this 9 o'clock hour, let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center to Reese Nygren. Quick update on the basketball front.
Yeah, Bucky McMillan yesterday announced Dave Good as the new associate head coach. Good spent the last 10 seasons under Bucky's staffs at both Samford and Mountain Brook High School. He served as the assistant head coach from 2023 to 2025 after initially being hired as the director of player development and scouting in 2020 with McMillan at Samford, and he was the associate head coach at Mountain Brook High School. On a different note, A&M volleyball was picked to finish third in the SEC preseason poll, finishing behind only Kentucky and Texas. A&M also garnered 1 first-place vote. They also earned 2 All-SEC team selections, with Logan Lednicki and Kos Okpala were named All-SEC first-team selections out of a group of 15 athletes. The Aggies kick off the volleyball season in Sioux Falls against Minnesota on August 25th.
Thank you, Reese. On the other side, Jason Howell, TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Low rider. Welcome back to TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Ryan Brauninger in the host chair today. David Nuno on vacation. And we are not on vacation because we got recruiting to talk about. And I have not been on vacation because Mike Elko has kept me and our next guest very, very busy over these summer months. We go out to the Buppy's Catering and Bartending Hotline, talk to Jason Howell. This is Recruiting Country presented by American Momentum Bank. Jason, the first thing I'm going to do is tell you that we have had an all-time quote made on this show today, and so whatever you're going to say, I don't think you're going to outdo Olin Buchanan, who looked right into the camera and was addressing the Texas A&M fan base and said, "You guys are 6 numbers away from me being your sugar daddy."
I heard it. I heard it. I'm ready to see it. I'm rooting for him to win the lottery. I want to see what's going on, man.
Boy, you think Olin's got no filter right now. Just give him a ton of money and watch what happens.
Yeah, wait till he buys TexAgs and then does everything.
All right, man. So we have a lot to get to, and I want to remind you, if you're listening and you want to get your recruiting questions answered, it seems to be a top-of-mind discussion for a lot of Aggie fans right now. 979-693-1150, 979-693-1150. Put Reese Nygren to work over there in the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. We'll get your questions read in the second segment. But Jason, everybody that follows recruiting is currently got all their eyes are on Baton Rouge, not because of what LSU's doing, but because of what's happening very close to LSU's campus tomorrow with the announcement of Lamar Brown, a prospect, in my summation, that is unlike any that I have covered, because we have seen, Jason, I know you have seen, skill players that could impact the game at the next level on both sides of the football. There's not been many, if any at all, line of scrimmage players that can do it like Lamar Brown.
Yeah, he's definitely unique. His skill set and the ability, like you said, to not only impact both sides of the line of scrimmage there on offense and defense, but on the defensive line, you could see him legitimately line up at four different spots. He brings a tremendous skill set to the table, from an explosive power. The way he comes off the ball, the flexibility, the ability to get underneath people, and he's a gifted athlete, and credit to A&M for being in the conversation right now as one of the top prospects in all the country. I want to say he's top 5 just about everywhere. Just a gifted, uniquely talented football player that can do a lot of different things for you.
Yeah, gifted is like a proper word to describe him, because obviously he's a big physical looking kid, but it's not it's not like Myles Garrett, who you covered up there at Arlington Martin, where this guy looks like a Greek god. It's Adonis looking sort of body type. It was easy to understand why Myles was so highly recruited. Lamar's a big physical kid. He passes the eyeball test, but whenever he puts his hand in the dirt and the ball is snapped, it's different. That is where you see the just elite gifts.
Yeah, you see the pop in his hands. I remember DJ Hicks coming out, and one of the things I loved about him was I called him defibrillator hands, because he could stop your heart in a second, just that quick punch. Lamar brings that kind of those kind of heavy hands to the table, where he can stop a guy in his tracks and get him moving in the direction he wants him to. Lamar, obviously, he's been a top priority for A&M throughout this recruiting process. He's visited multiple times. When was the first time you saw him? Was it 2 years ago at camp?
Yeah, camp. And you know what? Here's what I've said on the message board too, Jason. It's everything about this recruitment, if you just look at it on the surface, you say that kid's going to LSU. That's what all the signs tell you until you dive into what the kid has done and what the kid has said. It all points to LSU, except for he's been to A&M how many times now? And how many times has he just openly spoke glowingly about his experience at Texas A&M? Again, that's kind of, I think, what everybody's fighting when they're trying to get a grasp on what the direction of this recruitment, right?
there are reasons for hope, for sure. Absolutely. Like you said, he's had glowing remarks. He's talked about A&M being in his, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I want to say he said top 2 at points during his recruitment. Now, that tends to fluctuate over the time. He may have even called A&M the leader or something, or a leader at different times during his recruitment. Like you said, on the surface, he's a kid from Louisiana, Baton Rouge. But you also see those guys that, growing up in the area, they just want to change the scenery. We see it in Texas all the time. A guy grows up down the street and he wants to get out of town. He
just saw it yesterday with Jalen Lott.
Yeah, absolutely. Or like you talk about Jalen Lott, Caden Finley. These are 2 guys that grew up around that Texas program that, Texas was heavily involved in. And I think it was more about making their own legacy at a different place. There was some of that in that decision. So, they want to get out, spread their wings a little bit, and that could end up playing in A&M's favor as well. But I think, like you said, I think the most telling thing about Lamar and A&M being in the mix is that he has visited so many times. He's been to game day. He's been to camp. He's been to spring practices. He's forged relationships over multiple years with the coaching staff. I said I was 50-50 on, I guess it was the other day, Monday morning, and I was hearing some LSU momentum, and I meant to more direct that as, if you're saying there's no, people aren't confident out there in Baton Rouge about this one, you're wrong. There's some confidence, but there's also reason to believe A&M is a real factor in this one. And if I were to predict, it would be between those 2 schools. Not that Texas and Miami or anything to shove off, but those are the A&M and LSU have been the schools he's talked about the most, the schools he's visited the most, and the schools he seems to have the strongest relationships with over many years. So, that's what it's boiling down to for me. I don't know if I have a lean one way or the other.
I would personally lean A&M, but it's if you want to lean if you want to lean LSU, I understand that. The thing is, though, is this is shaping up like he's going to make a verbal commitment tomorrow, and there's still going to be some punches traded amongst all those schools, and maybe even more.
Well, absolutely, and I want to say, like, I'm not doubting, like, if Lamar comes out and says, I'm making this decision and this is going to be it for me, I have no doubt that that's what he wants to do and whatnot, and that's his plan. But you better believe if it's LSU, A&M is not stopping. If it's A&M, LSU is going to be all over him. Same with Texas and Miami as they do their thing. If they're not the choice, they're going to stay right in the mix for him because Lamar is a supremely talented, unique prospect. Like you said, there aren't guys out there like Lamar Brown every cycle. So the race is going to be furious until the very end, until he signs and everything, and he's on campus and getting reps. You know what I mean? So he's gonna see a continued recruitment regardless of what happens. Now, if he can put the phone on silent or lock it in a safe and never see it again, that may be the only way he quiets the storm there around his recruitment until signing day.
Well, one of the bigger recruitments that A&M was able to get over the line here in the last couple of weeks, Bryce Perry Wright out of Buford, Georgia, a kid who after his official visit, I'm not saying that there was zero A&M momentum, but there was less with him than maybe others. And to me, Bryce Perry Wright getting over the line in favor of the Aggies is a testament to just the persistence of the staff and the totality of the persistence amongst the staff, starting with Mike Elko. Just we haven't gotten your thoughts, I don't think, since Bryce Perry Wright made his commitment. We did the in-home visit, but just here on the radio show. When you looked at Bryce Perry Wright, you saw him up close and personal there in San Antonio at the All-American Bowl. Maybe doesn't pop in terms of measurables, but again, once the ball is snapped, and credit to Lucci, he made the Justin Madubuike comparison, and there's definitely some of that in there.
I tell you what, somebody else popped on the message board. I wish I could give him credit, but I can't remember exactly who it was. They said something about Ed Oliver, and that's not a out-of-pocket comparison, because there were times when you saw his body that you went, man, he's kind of lean, small for interior, for a guy that's right there in the trenches doing a lot of work. And when I saw Bryce Perry Wright, he was he looked like he had room to grow in his frame, but he didn't look meaty. He didn't just jump off to me, to be honest. But that's like Ed Oliver. He kind of hides that weight. When you actually put him on the scale and you get the measurements, you're like, wow, okay, I didn't realize he's 260 pounds. He doesn't look 260. He looks more like 245, and then you watch him in practice and you watch him on tape, you watch what he does. And yeah, I mean, he is a freak show out there. He is a Tasmanian devil in the trenches. He is a guy that bends the corner and gets to the quarterback. He fights through multiple blocks. He can move him inside, and he's a problem on the interior. He takes on double teams. He does a good job of doing all that activity and not losing his responsibilities and putting other players in danger. He is I love this kid. I love what he brings to the table. And while I said, from the eyeball perspective, my initial impression was like, oh, okay. Well, yeah, you see what he does, and then you find out more about what he actually measures in at, and you really, really like it. I can tell you, I give credit to Tony Girardetti, who's been on this one for several years. I want to say since he was a freshman. When I think Tony was serving kind of as an assistant to TP at that time. They've been on him. A&M's been on him for a long time, and this was, like you said, a credit to them to get him over the line. But I also think you see it sometimes. Some of these schools, they have more boisterous and I guess confident, whether it's justified or not, media that help push the narratives on where certain guys are leaning. And I think Bryce has always had a pretty strong feeling for Texas A&M. I think there's a reason why Texas A&M got that last visit, and A&M did what you do with the last visit. You push it over the line, you get things done, and they beat out some big time contenders in Clemson, who recruits that area harder than anybody. And has won a lot of major battles right there over the years with Dabo Swinney. And then you beat out Texas and Miami, who, hey, they can swing for the fences with the big boys. So it's a big time competition there that you're dealing with, and a major win for Texas A&M.
One of my favorite things about Bryce Perry Wright, you briefly mentioned it. It's just a personal thing for me. The fact that even though he's passed, Terry Price still has some sort of fingerprints on the program. And you mentioned TP was the guy that offered Bryce Perry Wright way back when. And so I just love the fact that, his memory's never going to go anywhere, especially for guys like me and you, where he was just
absolutely.
He was so personable and was always available and just incredibly giving of himself to everybody that he came across. But I mean, he didn't have to give the time that he did to me or you, and he always did. He always did. So I love the fact that TP's legacy is still going to hang around the actual football program at Texas A&M, and he's played a small part in this recruiting win for the Aggies and Bryce Perry Wright. All right, when we come back on the other side, If you got questions, maybe Jason's got answers. We'll see on the other side of the break. 979-693-1150 if you want to get in on this edition of Recruiting Country on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Continuing our recruiting talk on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. It's Recruiting Country, brought to you by American Momentum Bank. Let's go to the Angry Elephant News and Social Center. Reese Nygren has a couple of texts that have come in for Jason Howell.
Yeah, we had an anonymous texter ask, with the trajectory that this class is on, how does it compare to that 2022 class?
Yeah, I don't know if we'll see anything like the 22 class in terms of just. I think there were how many? There were, depending on what you looked at, there were like 8 to 10 5-stars in that class, and several of them in the top 15 in the country. But let me tell you, this is a special group that Texas A&M's putting together in the 26 cycle. If they can push it all across the finish line and make it all official, I think you're going to see this go down in history as one of the top, very few recruiting classes in Texas A&M history. I mean, it is heavy at the top. You've got a tremendous amount of priority guys on the defensive front, some highly sought recruits. We have how many? We have 3 as TexAgs 5-stars. I know Bryce Perry Wright is a 5-star on 247. So, I mean, you could see some reevaluations and some bumps over the course of the recruiting cycle and the evaluation process. But yeah, it's a special group that's coming together.
One more, Reese.
And then Olin mentioned in the Go Hour that you need about a third of the recruiting class to be quote unquote hits. What are kind of like what names would you give as hits so far for the 2026 class?
Well, I mean, you can't really that's kind of hard to say for right now. I mean, they haven't done anything in College Station. I think that's the whole point of being a hit. But I mean, when you look at the higher end of that recruiting class, you've got a number of guys that have the upside and ability to be contributors at a very early stage in their careers at Texas A&M. But yeah, I mean, as you can't determine anybody a hit in this 26 recruiting cycle.
Hey, Jason, so one of the things that Olin and I did talk about was just if you looked at the map of the United States and you started putting pins on where this recruiting class is coming from, it's as diverse in that respect as any, I think, that we've ever seen, maybe going back to that 2022 class.
I would say that 22 class is right up there. And you mentioned 2020, yeah, I saw y'all kind of breaking that one down with some of the hits, and man, a lot of those hits were out of state guys. I'm not gonna lie. McKinley, you had
Edgerrin Cooper,
you had Edge, you had I know Moose. I heard was kind of qualified as a hit. Diggs and Rakes from New Jersey. So you got some guys in that group, and over the years you've seen a number of those guys be out of state. In 21, I know you got Tyreek Chappelle. You've got Marcel. You have several out of state guys that have been hits over the years in recent history for Texas A&M. But I agree. As far as the amount of top out of state guys that they've landed right now, it's right there next to that 2022 class as far as those big time out of state talents committed to Texas A&M.
What I was going to do, so let's kind of focus it back in on your area, and I want to talk a little bit about, because I think with what they've got in DFW right now between Zayden Crimpin and Chance Collins, I think you've got 2 different trajectory kind of players. So, like, I think when I look at what I mean by is Zayden Crimpin, extremely high floor player. Like, as he reminds me of Kenyon Green. Like, we knew what Kenyon Green was going to be. Like, I don't think he's just like, he's a safe bet. He's a really good player. Yeah. He's a good prospect, and he's a safe bet. Where Chance Collins, I think what you've got is a really high ceiling. And I think a lot of the folks, the power programs in the region, are going to be really tuned in to see how he performs early in the season, because he's one of the guys I've got marked that, like, hey, maybe a big bump's coming for Chance Collins.
Yeah, I mean, I could see it, especially with Collins. He's done so much on both sides of the ball there at Summit, or not Summit. Wow, Timberview. I'm going to be in trouble. But yeah, he's done a lot on both sides of the ball there, and he attracted a lot of attention from inside the state. I think, to me, that says a lot about what he brings to the table. You saw Texas A&M, Baylor, TCU, Texas Tech, all these schools really wanting him as part of their team, and A&M was able to pull it out this summer. But yeah, he brings a lot to the table in terms of his instincts, and I love what he brings in terms. I think 6'1.5", 6'2", 190, 195 at safety. He's a solid ball player. He's Edge Cooper's little cousin. I mean, you gotta love that.
Yeah,
right?
bloodlines, right?
Exactly.
And we were kind of going through the class, and I was looking at least on the TexAgs rankings. Stay tuned to that, by the way. Some updates coming to TexAgs rankings. But the bottom three in our class, and we're taking out Asher Murray, the kicker here, but just looking at position players, the bottom three: Storm Miller, Chance Collins, and Caden Johnson. Look, we got intel this week that Ohio State sounds like they're preparing to make a push for Storm Miller. That should tell you that A&M did a great job of evaluating that one. And then Caden Johnson, I'll say it, like, he's the biggest riser we've got in our rankings, and I think nationally you're going to see that reflected as well. Like, this kid's he's got a rocket ship attached to him.
Uncoachable traits there. I mean, just from a pure athletic size standpoint, he's got things you can't teach, and he's got a lot he brings to the table, a lot to like there. And like you said, as an athlete, man, you got to love the things that he brings to the table. Once things change from being a quarterback to an athlete, I think that really saw his trajectory slide up. And shoot, a guy that A&M missed on, not missed, but a guy that went another direction. Legend Bay was very similar, where you saw move from quarterback to athlete, and the stock kind of rises and your options change a little bit.
All right. So, look, we talked about with Olin the schools in the state of Texas that have been the most fruitful for Texas A&M. And to me, the top of mind goes to DeSoto. Are there some other ones in DFW where you're like, man, like A&M just does such a good job at that school?
Man, over the years, let's see, man. DeSoto's definitely at the top of that list. They've been very active in, I'm trying to think. Geyer was a school they dug into there for a good bit, with Eli Stowers and Deuce Harmon there in the one class there. But over the years,
Allen,
recent history, they haven't really just claimed a school that I would say is there. But I will say, under Mike Elko, they can go into any program, and they've shown it. Last year they did a great job at Mesquite Horn, and working that relationship, especially when it came to Lamont Rogers. They were very active, more active in Denton Ryan than they've been in the past. You see them being more active in Duncanville right now. I think over the years they've had some success at Cedar Hill when they've had some big guys that A&M's wanted. And next year you got a big one, a big dog out there in Jalen Brewster. Waxahachie, I want to say A&M's been pretty strong in. A lot on that south side of DFW, I think, are very A&M friendly programs. But DeSoto, I think right now, just off the top of my head, would be the one school that I'd say they've had the most success at over, in recent history.
Yeah, and not to dive into too much of our ratings update, but when you look at the class of 2027, you look at names like John Meredith at Euless Trinity and Cooper Witten, Argyle Liberty Christian, Jalen Brewster at Cedar Hill, Zane Rowe at Denton Geyer, Brian Swanson at South Oak Cliff. It's pretty DFW heavy at the top, and A&M's going to have a real chance to make their mark again in the Metroplex.
Yeah, I would say I'm excited to cover Arlington Lamar Viking out there. Braylon Williams, another one that's top of mind. But that the class as a whole in 27.
Oh, it's loaded.
I mean, I think we have debates somewhat of 26, and you always have discussions about who's at the top and whatnot. But in 27, it's not so much that there's not one; it's just so many that could be. It's like you can make a really strong case for a number of those guys. You mentioned John Meredith and Cooper Witten. You've got let me tell you, once that O-line group, you got 3 or 4 in there that could be viable number one in the state candidates, and it's a phenomenal year overall. Linebacker, DB, all over the place. But it's insane. Some of the talent that's around the state, but DFW is going to bring it.
Yeah,
they're going to bring it.
If Ishmael Kamara out of Gilmer had any varsity tape, I think that's he is one of the more intriguing offensive line prospects I've ever seen in the state of Texas. I mean, you think about his history and coming over from France and kind of inserting himself into American football, and not only inserting himself, but like everywhere he goes, all the coaches are going, that's different. Like that's a special kind of athlete on the offensive line. And I'll tell you this, little peek behind the curtain, if he had varsity film, he'd have been our number one player in the state in that class.
No doubt. So, I mean, he is the way he moves, his intensity on the field, his mentality and approach. He brings a lot to the table. I even hear there's talk of him flipping over to the defensive line and going a little Lamar Brown. And
two-way.
I heard he got pulled out of some camps doing some D-line, that it was just not cool, not fair. So, but yeah, so. He's gonna be fun to watch this fall. He's at the top of my can't wait to see list when he finally gets on that field, and I think some poor opponent's going to be licking their wounds for a few weeks.
All right, Jason, appreciate the time, man.
Anytime.
All right, it's Jason Howell on the Buppy's Catering and Bartending Hotline. We're going to close the show. 2 short segments here to close the show. Get you ready for the rest of your Wednesday and into Thursday on a B-Team edition of TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. You know who sings Slow Ride? Would it kill you to play a little Fog Hat? The name of the band is Fog Hat. Ryan Brauninger closing down a Wednesday edition of TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Luke Evangelist was in the studio adjusting cameras. He broke some news last night on the Aggie basketball schedule. The scheduled home opener against UCF has been moved from November 3rd to the 14th. So it's a little light for a non-conference slate for Bucky McMillan, but in his defense, very much in his defense, Reese, I think he's playing. He's got to work with what he's got, and I don't think much was left for him in terms of non-conference schedule, especially when they took away that players tournament.
Yeah, I mean that players era tournament is like such a big deal, and then it got pulled out from underneath him. Like he's now trying to find any. It seems like he's trying to find any Power 5, Power 4 game that he can. So I'm not going to give him too much hate for the schedule because
no, I think he's going to get a pass on a lot of things in year one. Yeah. And the schedule certainly, with still got an open date, I think on November 3rd, right? They're looking for an opponent. I wouldn't mind if the Navasota Rattlers came up here and Nick Savage got to call the game, play-by-play for the Rattlers.
I mean, that's a nice statistical boost there for a home opener.
Play a 3A high school.
Coming in, averaging like 200 points per game.
You had some things that you wanted to get to, and we got some time here to at the end of the show.
So I put together a list of 7 non-conference SEC games minus the big hitters, so no A&M, Notre Dame, no Texas, Ohio State. And I'm just curious on a scale of 1 to 10, I guess how intriguing each game sounds to you.
Well, I can tell you one of them that I'm intrigued by just because the brainiac in the back, Matthew Dawson. Where's Auburn Baylor on your list?
That was the very first game that I was going to talk about.
I mean, if you listen to Matthew Dawson, he's have you convinced that that's like the Super Bowl of the college football season.
I think I'm intrigued by it just because it's the first week of the season and it's like the second big game, first SEC game of the season. So that's kind of my intrigue, but also it seems like it's going to be a pretty dang good game.
I'm intrigued by Auburn, like with those receivers, with Jackson Arnold. Is he a different kind of player in Hugh Freeze's system and a change of scenario? Like there's some intrigue about Auburn, and there is some intrigue about Baylor. There's some people in Waco that think the Bears are going to be good. And quite frankly, look, I'm not trying to demean or put down Baylor. I don't think Dave Aranda should be on the hot seat because what is the Baylor job anymore? Yeah. Like I think the overall look of the Baylor job has changed. But he probably needs to win a few more games. Like this needs to be a good season for Dave Aranda. And they've got good players. Their running back, Bryson Washington's a fantastic player. He's from right up the road in Franklin.
Yeah, I think Matt Rule kind of raised expectations for Baylor, and then he left, and then Dave Aranda made it to the Sugar Bowl, and then Baylor fans were like, okay, like we're a legit program, and then they had a few quote-unquote down years. I think Baylor's looking at everybody would love a 12-0 season, but I think 8 to 9 wins kind of keeps him off I don't think he should be on the hot seat, but I think Baylor fans kind of want 8 to 9 wins to feel like they're making progress.
The most intriguing clubs to me in the Big 12 are Baylor and Texas Tech.
Yeah.
And a lot of people are giving the Red Raiders a ton of love, and I think this will be Joey McGuire's best roster that he's had up there, no question. But I still don't look at that team, and I've got no idea what the top end of the Big 12 is going to look like. Yeah. And it was topsy-turvy last year, and so there's an inherent unpredictability that comes with college football in general, but it seems like that league, there's some real question marks for even the teams at the top where you could see the postseason standings be very different than the preseason predictions. That's it. Like, I think Texas Tech, I got big questions about them, and I got big questions about Baylor. But you're asking about my level of intrigue in that Auburn-Baylor game. Like, I'll be tuned in for that. Like, I'll be interested to see what happens.
Yeah, so we'll move on to the next game. Also, it's on that Saturday in Atlanta, Syracuse versus Tennessee.
Boy, it'd be it's a huge statement potential for Fran Brown and what he's trying to change up there at Syracuse. they lost Kyle McCord, set all those records. Tennessee has to run the football. They have to. And I'm not going to sit up here and pretend that I know what Syracuse's front seven looks like or their depth chart. I would lean Volunteers, but that is upset special. Like, Syracuse can win that football game because with Aguilar at quarterback at Tennessee, they didn't put up a ton of points last year. Yeah. I think they get kind of this false sense of, hey, they're good on offense just because it's Heupel and it's up-tempo, but they don't score a lot of points. Like, I would have that one behind Baylor-Auburn, but I could see Syracuse making that interesting.
Yeah, I think like you mentioned, Tennessee breaking in a new quarterback, and then they lost Dylan Sampson, their top running. So just kind of how that running back room looks, and then obviously they lost Pearson or Norman Lott on defense. So just kind of seeing what Tennessee looks like. I would not be surprised in the slightest if the Syracuse Orange win that game. Moving on, it's the Sunday game, Virginia Tech versus South Carolina.
I mean, sorry, I shouldn't do that. South Carolina, I think they're going to be good. I'd be interested to see their front seven, but I also don't think that we're going to learn a ton about it again in week one against an offense and a Virginia Tech program that really seems kind of stale.
Yeah, I think it's a kind of prove it game for Virginia Tech to see if they finally can get over the hump. But the question is, what is getting over the hump?
Yeah, and again, I don't know that South Carolina, like, that's going to be the accurate measuring stick for what they're going to be the rest of the year. I think if I had to guess, South Carolina is going to score points. That's just based off the talent they've got offensively.
Yeah. Okay. We'll move on to the fourth game. It's an old rivalry coming back, not too intriguing of a game, but Kansas at Missouri.
Yeah, a pretty low level of intrigue for me. I don't think Missouri is going to be very good. I like their transfer class, but I got big questions about Bo Pribula at quarterback. And then, KU, I think, is probably a middle-of-the-road Big 12 team.
Yeah, I was just curious to see what your thoughts were. I mean, Missouri's on A&M schedule.
Yeah,
they're breaking in a new quarterback, just kind of seeing.
If Mizzou really struggles offensively against KU, I'll file that away.
Okay, next game, it's kind of a big hitter, depending on what your terms of big hitter are. Michigan at Oklahoma in week 2.
I think that's going to be a boring game.
Fair.
I would bet the under. But that's cool. Those are two blue bloods, and that's an early season game. Yeah, I'll watch.
Yeah, I think the quarterback, if Bryce Underwood is Michigan's quarterback, the Underwood-Mateer storyline.
That's a great storyline.
That's a pretty intriguing one, plus Michigan going on the road to Oklahoma. That very rarely do you see power conference schools schedule SEC schools on the road nonetheless. Next game, it's coming back, second year of a home and home, Wisconsin at Alabama. It doesn't.
That's roll tide roll, dude.
Yeah,
you saw what happened last year in Madison. And look, I think people will be eager to make judgment about this Alabama team with Ty Simpson at quarterback. They've got a lot of really good pieces coming back, especially defensively. Does Bama, and I just don't think Wisconsin man-to-man can hold up. Like that's going to be a 3 or 4 touchdown win for Alabama.
Yeah, I think that game you're looking more at what does Alabama look like on offense versus how good is Wisconsin, because I don't think anybody's all that high. Lastly, this is kind of I don't expect intrigue to be all that high, but Arkansas at Memphis.
I'm telling you what, that intrigue's gonna be real high in Fayetteville, because if you go across the state and you lose to Memphis with Sam Pittman squarely on the hot seat, boy, it's gonna get loud.
Yeah. There's a lot of people that are high on Taylor Green, including SEC Mike. I think he had him 4th in his SEC quarterback rankings based off potential. I'll be curious to see how he looks another year in the system, kind of if he progresses to the level that people expect him to.
They're going to have to block better.
Yeah.
And they lost their wide receivers like that. And that's got upset on it. Memphis can absolutely win that game.
Yeah, it's
absolutely. All right, we come back. Good stuff, Reese. We come back. We'll close the show here on Wednesday. TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Final segment of the show today, Wednesday morning, TexAgs Live. Final segment brought to you by Double Dave's. And it seems like most of the chatter revolving around today's show came at the, is about Olin's 1 hour appearance, but more specifically the Sugar Daddy line.
Yeah.
We are going to efforts. We'll see if Nick Savage will get on board with this. But during the opening of the show, that montage, it's got a clip from Olin talking about the new studio, which is almost a year old now. And it says, I feel like I'm in the Jeffersons, we're moving on up. And Olin wants to take that out.
Yeah.
And I think his line about being, A&M 6 numbers away from me being their sugar daddy, that to me, that goes right in to that slot.
Yeah, that seems like a shoe-in for the first thing that people hear before they hear the show, because then it perfectly segues into you seeing Olin for the go hour. So
yes.
I would sign off on that. I'm putting my vote as a yes for that being in.
Well, I don't know if Nick's going to be listening to votes. He'll be the ultimate veto. But at least maybe we can get it in front of him, get it on the table. You had one more thing that you wanted to get to before we ended the show today?
Yeah, so A&M announced who will be attending SEC Media Days alongside Coach Mike Elko. It'll be junior linebacker Torian York, graduate offensive guard Armaje Reed-Adams, and senior corner Will Lee III. Curious, is that who you thought?
Yeah, that's fine. And I know that not having Marcel go sparked some conversation within the A&M fan base, but I think even regionally in the league, like, oh, why isn't A&M sending Marcel? Who cares about this stuff? Really, like that is a complete overreaction if you have a problem with it. I view SEC Media Days about of the same importance as I view spring football. Like it's a nothing. Nobody remembers it. Once the ball's kicked off and they start playing real games, nobody remembers how good A&M looked in the spring game. Nobody is going to remember what Armaje Reed-Adams said in SEC Media Days.
Yeah, I think people are just looking for bulletin board material that they can put as a headline. It's clickbaiting.
And we're going to run out the clock scenario till we get to actual football.
Yeah.
And so they got to have stuff to talk about. But I appreciate Chris on the sticks. Reese, appreciate you. Everybody's help behind the scenes here on this Wednesday show. Nick Savage, I don't know who's hosting tomorrow. Maybe Nick. Somebody else is in this seat tomorrow, and then I'll be back on Friday. TexAgs Live. Oh, yeah, Matthew Dawson and Luke Evangelist tomorrow. That will be must-see television. I'll be back on Friday, close out the week here on TexAgs Live, presented by David Gardner's Jewelers. Have a blessed day.